Soldier, there was nothing there. Ghost towns. Except for some livestock, nothing moved. Soldier, most of the time it was boring. There were really not too many events. Soldier, I did not see one single Arab the whole time we were there, that whole week. Soldier, everyone was disappointed about not engaging anyone. Soldier, usually we did not see a living soul, except for our soldiers, of course. Not a soul. Soldier, go ahead, ask the other soldiers how often they encountered combatants in Gaza. Nothing, no one. Soldier, there was supposed to be a tiny resistance force upon entry, but there just wasn't any. No battles, no enemy in the field, no tangling with a foe. That's only half the story. Soldier after soldier, although they were interviewed separately, soldier after soldier says, Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. No battles, no enemy in the field, no tangling with the foe, but Israel is using insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. One soldier after another testifies. One soldier said, this was firepower such as I had never known. There were blasts all the time. The earth was constantly shaking. Another soldier said, on the ground you hear these thunderous blasts all day long. The Israelis commandeered Palestinian homes in Gaza, were firing into the horizon, but the ground underneath them was shaking. It was shaking so much they were told to leave the houses they had commandeered for fear the houses would collapse on them. So what did happen in Gaza? Actually, the Israeli soldiers came up with the most telling metaphors. One soldier said, it felt like hunting season had begun. Sometimes it reminded me of a PlayStation computer game. Another soldier said, you felt like a child playing around with a magnifying glass, burning up ants. You felt like a child with a magnifying glass, burning up ants. I was a kid once. I had my magnifying glass. I'm not very proud of it. Focused the rays of the sun, turned the ants into crispy critters. But I was not so delusional, I don't think, as to believe I was engaged in a war with the ants. In fact, the metaphor, a child with a magnifying glass burning up ants, was remarkably accurate. Among Israel's tools of the trade is its promiscuous use of white phosphorus. White phosphorus, it reaches a temperature of 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, 816 degrees centigrade. 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As Oprah would say, try wrapping your mind around that. So what did Israel do with the white phosphorus? Human Rights Watch, the respected human rights organization, put out a report after the Gaza invasion entitled Rain of Fire. And it said, and now I'm quoting it, Israel repeatedly exploded white phosphorus munitions in the air over populated areas, killing and injuring civilians and damaging civilian structures. Israel dropped the white phosphorus in a school. It dropped the white phosphorus on a market. It dropped the white phosphorus on a humanitarian aid warehouse. It dropped the white phosphorus on 2 hospitals. It dropped white phosphorus in Al-Quds Hospital, and it dropped white phosphorus on Al-Wafa Hospital. Human Rights Watch wrote that the hospitals were clearly marked, and there does not appear to have been fighting in that immediate area. By the end of those 22 days, 1,400 Palestinians had been killed, of whom up to 4/5 were civilians. About 358 were children. 13 Israelis were killed, of whom 10 were combatants, and half of the combatants were killed due to what's called friendly fire, namely Israeli soldiers accidentally killed other Israeli soldiers. So, for every Israeli killed, 100 Palestinians were killed. For every Israeli civilian killed, about 400 Palestinian civilians were killed. That's plainly not a war. That's a massacre. After those 22 days, Israel tried hard to deflect some of the criticisms directed at it. For example, Israeli attacks damaged or destroyed 29 ambulances. Israeli attacks damaged or destroyed almost half of Gaza's 122 health facilities, including 15 hospitals. Israel said, well, what can we do? These Hamas militants, these cowards and lunatics, they were using the hospitals as refuge. But then the human rights organizations investigated the allegation after the end of the invasion. 1 human rights organization, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, really. They all investigated it separately. They all came to the same conclusion. There is no evidence that Hamas militants were hiding in the hospitals. Then Israel said Hamas was using the ambulances to ferry around ammunition, weapons, and terrorists. Human rights organizations investigated the charge. They found no evidence. In fact, Israel's own ambulatory service, it's called Magen David Adom, they themselves publicly testified, and now I'm quoting them. There was no use of Palestinian Red Crescent Society ambulances for the transport of weapons or ammunition. Even Israel's own ambulatory service said it's just not true. Nonetheless, Israel damaged or destroyed 29 ambulances. Then Israel destroyed 30 mosques and damaged 15 more. Israel said the mosques were being used to conceal weapons and were being used to launch attacks. The mission headed by Richard Goldstone, to whom I'll return, he investigated one case of what he called an intentional Israeli attack on a mosque that killed at least 15 Palestinians who were attending service. What did he conclude?